So I thought it would be fun to see visually something that we've mentioned briefly, and that is how Moses and his writing team have gone to great lengths in the book of Exodus to show how Israel's journey from oppression in Egypt, rescue through the waters, and then everything that happened thereafter was patterned alongside Moses' personal journey. If you see on this chart, Moses was saved as a baby from the Nile River. Remember that? Amongst the reeds there, he was drawn out. And Israel also was saved through the waters, weren't they? In the Sea of Reeds, or as we know, the Red Sea. And then what happened in Moses' life? He was called. He was given his encounter with Yahweh one-on-one was first on Mount Sinai, or it's also called Mount Horeb. It's the same mountain. And he encounters God personally at this burning bush, and he's given his commission. Well, that's Israel had their first, or their major encounter with the lawgiver, God, personally, at this same mountain. The same mountain. Moses flees into the wilderness. So Israel also enters the wilderness. Moses receives the call and the mission, what he's supposed to do. Israel receives the covenant at that same mountain. So Moses, as he's meeting God on Mount Sinai and actually sees God's glory there, the scripture reference that wasn't included in this chart that I think is crucial is Exodus chapter 24, when Moses walks into the scary cloud of the presence of God on the mountain. Well, we see here in chapter 40 something that parallels that with a twist. So just to keep in mind, Moses is written about as a prototype for Israel's journey in Exodus. Rescue, calling, covenant, and then finally glory. One massive takeaway, I just want you to please, if you just take one thing from this entire 16-week course, let this be it. Notice at the beginning of this chart how both Moses and Israel were rescued. Like at the beginning, right? When did the law come? And when did Moses' commission come? Later on. So were Moses and Israel saved by following the law? Of course not. They were saved and then the law came. This is not just a New Testament concept that salvation is by grace through faith. We are shown here in Israel's own story in Exodus, salvation precedes works, or even knowledge of what those works are. Okay, big item to take away. So how did Exodus, as we started this journey, how did it begin? It began by oppression, slavery, in exile, not in the promised land, but in exile in Egypt under the snake king. This is the Pharaoh that is in the slot of like the serpent, oppressive, iron-fisted ruler, my way or the highway, willing to kill whoever he needs to kill to get his way. He's literally the guy with the hat with the snake coming out of it. That's how it begins. And how does it end? That's what we're getting to tonight. So something to kind of put a pin in and just hold in the back of your mind as we go through portions of this last chapter. What is the focus of the entire story of Exodus? Where are we headed? Where are we trying to get? Where's the Moses writing team trying to bring us to? What's like the hope of Exodus? Is it freedom? Is it freedom from oppression? That's kind of what the Ten Commandments, the plagues story is all about, the rescue from Egypt, those mighty signs, and then finally rescue through the Reed Sea or the Red Sea. Is that the goal? Well, there's much more that happens after that. What about the land that was promised to Abraham? Is that the goal of Exodus? It's not happening in this chapter. It's not. It doesn't happen until actually after the Pentateuch, after the Torah. Well, Torah, is it about the giving of the law? Is that the main point of Exodus? The giving of the law is obviously a very crucial part of Exodus, but remember, Torah means instruction. So Torah, or law, is not just the Ten Commandments and all the laws that surround the Ten Commandments. It's the whole thing from Genesis 1 to the end of Deuteronomy. The actual goal and focus of Exodus happens at almost the last verse of this chapter, which we'll see in a few minutes. Okay, verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, on the first day of the first month, you shall set up the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. And, place the ark of the testimony there, screen off the ark with the veil, bring in the table, arrange what belongs on it. All of this has already been described in great detail. Then you should bring in the lampstand and mount its lamps. Remember the lampstand? This is the stand-in image for the tree of life. And also set the gold altar of incense in front of the ark of the testimony. Set up the curtain for the doorway to the tabernacle. Set the altar of burnt offering in front of the doorway of the tabernacle, the tent of meeting. And the basins, very important. Set the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar. Put water in it. That's what it's for. And you shall also set up the courtyard all around. Hang up the curtain for the gate of the courtyard. Take the anointing oil, anoint the tabernacle. So take the oil, anoint the tabernacle, and everything that's in it, consecrate it and its furnishings, and it shall be holy. And in the context of the Torah, what is holy? It's set aside for sacred use. That's what holy means. It's not only, moral righteousness. It's also, this is something that, is not to be used in a way that is not aligned with sacred ritual. So we talked about the analogy of the toothbrush. Remember that? You set aside the toothbrush. You don't use it for cleaning other things, It's set aside. This is what holy is in the context of the tabernacle. So anoint the tabernacle, but also anoint the altar, the burnt and its utensils, consecrate the altar, anoint the basin. Verse 12, then you shall bring Aaron and his sons to the doorway of the tent and wash them with water. Wash them. And you shall put the holy garments on Aaron and anoint him and consecrate him so that he may serve as a priest to me. Bring his sons, put tunics on them, anoint them just as you've anointed their father so that they may serve as priests to me. Okay, so picture in your mind what we talked about last week. We've got the tabernacle, which is on the inside. The inner curtains of the tabernacle are this amazing fabric that's purple and scarlet and gold woven, actual gold, threads woven in there on the inner part of it. On the outside, it's white. It's like light canvas color on the outside. So as you go in, the colors pop. The priests are inside out tabernacle because the priests on the outside on Aaron's garment, it's that same inner tabernacle, woven together scarlet and purple and gold threads and all of that. And then his undergarments are the white. So he is the inside out mobile tabernacle. And what's his role is to carry on his bib, if you will, the 12 names. These are names that are engraved on the 12 stones, the names of Israel. He bears the name of Israel with the 12 tribes. And he's the representative of Israel as he enters into the tabernacle in the future and carries out his responsibilities, which that's another book. So all of this is set up here and just described in enormous detail in the previous chapters, and now it's summarized. This is to be set up on the first day of the month, which incidentally is 1 year exactly after they left Egypt. And the redemption story now turns towards the worship that is ordered and something else that we'll get to. So how does the Torah begin? It begins with Yahweh ordering the cosmos in 7 days. He puts it all into order. Now there's this ordering of the tabernacle. So here's the space. You've got the ark on the very inside. Then there's a veil. You remember what's on top of the ark and also in the veil? The cheruvim, the cherubim, right? And then there's a table in the holy place, not in the Holy of Holies. You've got the table holds the bread representing the 12 tribes, 6 and 6. You've got the lampstand, which is an image of the tree of life. You've got an altar of incense, which is an image of prayer going before the Lord. Altar of burnt offering, or literally going up offering, where the innocent life, because of the smoke, goes up to the heavens. See the image there? And then, of course, there's a basin. There's got to be water that you go through. So the picture that we have of this is not correct because, it doesn't separate the holy place from the most holy place, and we've got some furniture on the outside. So this is moving day. This is moving day. Cloud is moved, so they're all taking it apart. But you see the elements in this diagram. And all of these elements have important sacred meaning. That's just talking about the furniture elements and what they represent is like 3 semesters of courses. But I want you to see how structured and intentional access to God is supposed to be in the tabernacle. It represents that what was on Sinai is now brought into the camp of the Israelites. Do you have to go up the mountain now? No, the mountain has come down to you. And why do you suppose Yahweh would give all these precise instructions for this ordered space? Okay, let's look a little bit about the ark. Verse 18, Moses erected the tabernacle, laid its bases, set up its boards. And when it says that Moses did this, is the Moses writing team assuming that we're imagining Moses by himself at, 80 years old, constructing the tabernacle? For sure not. For sure not. When Moses and the people who are helping Moses do it, it's Moses doing it. So in the ancient mindset, whoever is the captain of the team, you can totally legit say, and Moses did exactly what he was supposed to do, and your mind says, and of course he had plenty of help, but he's the captain. This is also how ancient writing worked. This is why we have letters of Paul in the New Testament. And then sometimes Paul says, oh, and you know who else wrote this? Is Timothy and this person and that person. In the ancient mindset that whoever's the captain of the team is like the main dude, and you can just say Paul. Meanwhile, 1 Corinthians, he says, from Paul and Timothy. It's just how it works. So, anyway, that was free. That was just a little literary aside there. Nerd stuff. So, verse 20, he took the testimony, put it into the ark, attached the poles to the ark. Y'all remember what's inside the ark? Exodus doesn't tell us, but the letter to the Hebrews tells us. Yeah, the tablets of the law, a pot of manna, very good, I heard someone say that, and then something from a story that comes later, Aaron's rod that budded. Yeah, that's what's inside. Not ghosts that come out and tear your flesh off like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Okay. He then brought the ark into the tabernacle, set up a veil for the covering, screened off the ark of the testimony, just as the Lord commanded Moses. So the ark goes in first because the ark is a representation of God's own throne. But what I want you to see is the way this is being ordered and described, that the tabernacle is like this mini cosmos. It's like a little mini universe in which God will show his presence. The structure actually mirrors the creation in Genesis chapter 2, the creation of Eden. The outer court, and we've had diagrams that we've looked at before in this, the outer court corresponds to the land of Eden. The holy place corresponds to the garden in Eden, and the most holy place corresponds to the center of the garden, where the tree of life is. And on the way to the tree of life, there's another tree, another story. But the building of this tabernacle, it mirrors that creation language that we have in Genesis. So if you kind of reverse the echo, what is the creation of the cosmos supposed to be, ultimately? It's supposed to be a temple. Cosmos is created to be a temple in which the presence of God is present. God did not come from the temple. He created the temple, but he rests in this temple. That's what it's supposed to be. Okay, so now God's throne is this representative throne, this ark, which was skillfully constructed by Bezalel. Remember the first guy that explicitly says in the Bible was filled with the Holy Spirit? He was a craftsman. And so here is this throne that was crafted by somebody filled with the Spirit of God. And now what happens? So we have more placing of things. Moses put the table in the tent of meeting on the north side of the tabernacle, set the arrangement of bread in order on it before the Lord, just as the Lord commanded. He placed the lampstand in the tent of the meeting. He lighted the lamps before the Lord. He placed the gold altar in the tent of meeting in front of the veil. He burned the fragrant incense on it. So all of these things that have been ordered now have their function. Oh, and this is very important. We talked about Aaron and the priests being washed in the basin before they enter in. What does that remind you of? Does it remind you a little bit of Israel itself going through the waters of the Red Sea and Moses himself being drawn from the waters? So the basin is like a symbol of the sea, which in ancient Israelite thinking is chaos and disorder and death, if you will, from which it's nothingness, essentially. Disorder and nothingness are put on comparison to each other. And so in Genesis, the first page of the Bible, where does the livable land come from? It emerges from the waters. What happens to Moses? He emerges from the waters into new creation life. What happens to Israel? They go through the waters and emerge on the other side into new creation life. And the priests are supposed to act this out through this washing in the basin. Now think forward. You think this has anything to do with baptism? It's a symbol of new creation life from page 1 in the Bible. Okay. But notice this sequence of objects. The ark is going to be related to Yahweh's presence. Not yet, but we'll see in a bit. The veil is related to the angelic guard. Remember how Yahweh set up Eden once the humans were expelled from it? Yeah, he set up a guard, the cherubim. And so here they are, on guard. They're actually pictured on the veils, right before you enter the most holy place. Then you have the table, which is, of course, provision. This is why there are 12 loaves on it. The provision. What is the famous name for God that God provides? Remember what that is? Jehovah Jireh, or Yahweh Yireh in Hebrew, closer to it in Hebrew. And where does this first appear? First appears at the binding of Isaac, Genesis 22. When Abraham is asked to just give up everything he's ever been promised, his own son, Yahweh through the angel stills his hand and provides a substitute. And therefore, what is that place called? Yahweh Yireh, which literally means, yes, God provides, but it also literally means God will see to it. He will see to it. And so this is the provision of the Lord, is Yahweh's going to see to it. The lampstand to provide light, but this is tree of life kind of symbol. The tree of life illumines the way to Yahweh. There's something about trees that is a recurring theme throughout the scriptures. Trees are really important. There's going to be a couple things with trees in the Gospel of John that's just going to blow your mind. Okay. The altar, of course, this is the sacrifice where an unblemished, innocent life goes up. And this is like overcoming the deadly effects of sin symbolically. And then the basin is the cleansing, the going through the waters. Verse 33, he erected the courtyard all around the tabernacle and the altar and hung up the curtain for the gate of the courtyard. And so Moses, what? He finished. He finished the work. Now, the faithful Torah reader says, well, that reminds me of another work that was finished, where Elohim, where God finished the work of creation in Genesis chapter 2, verse 2. Same language. Same language. This is an echo. The tabernacle is an image of new creation space. And instead of God doing it directly, he's doing it the way he's passionate about doing things. He loves doing things this way, is working through his imagers, his humans. So God is restoring in the midst of Israel, even after their horrible failure of the golden calf worship. He is restoring Eden-like fellowship. Is it complete yet? Nope, not yet. The goal of salvation in the Exodus, the goal, the focus, I promised you would find out. It's God's presence. It's not only being rescued. I mean, that's important. It's really important. It's not only that, hey, we're moving you to a new land flowing with milk and honey. That's important. We're going to assign you as the chosen people. That's important too. But it's not the end goal. It's not the great promise of Exodus. The great promise is the presence of God that was lost to humanity in Eden will be restored. That's pretty huge. It's pretty huge, especially since everybody's feeling the presence of God is a little scary. I don't know how safe it is. More on that in a second. So in Exodus chapter 25, verse 8, it reads, "Let them construct a sanctuary for me that I may," what? "Dwell among them." Everything from chapter 25 onward leads to the moment that we're about to get in verse 24 of chapter 40. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the kavod, the glory of Yahweh, filled the tabernacle. Here it is, folks. We've been waiting since the 3rd page of the Bible for this. This is big. Yahweh is among humans. Again, in this mini cosmos that's been constructed like as the marriage home. Even though the bride is already cheated in chapter 32. Yahweh's still holding up his end of the bargain. He's holding up both ends of the bargain. And the glory, the kavod, the weightiness, the honor and reputation of Yahweh fills this tabernacle, and the cloud covers. So this is the same cloud that appeared at the Red Sea and at Mount Sinai. Same one. And the tabernacle then becomes like a portable Sinai. Remember when they first arrived at Sinai and they're looking up at the top of this mountain and there's a cloud and there's thunder and there's fire, lightnings, and it's like, whoo. And they're being invited to come up and they're like, hi. We were just told not to even touch the mountain, so I'm thinking it's probably. And the Lord's like, Moses, you come up. Yeah, Moses, there he goes. He's going up. Okay, he's close to the cloud. Don't go in the cloud. That's there. And he goes in the cloud. Well, there you go. I wonder when he's coming out. If he's coming out. 40 days later. I don't think he's coming out. I think we need to figure out this worship thing on our own. God's so merciful. And now that same presence, that weighty presence of the Lord descends upon this tabernacle. And remember what the presence of God is for. It's not just so that people will feel all, chills and goosebumps as they sing to him. It's intended for doing right by God and other people. That's the point of his presence. Tzedakah in Hebrew. Righteousness is how it gets translated. But what is righteousness? Righteousness is doing right by God and others. It really is loving God and loving people. Okay, so here we are. We can connect with Yahweh individually, personally, right? Verse 35. And Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled on it. And the kavod of Yahweh filled the tabernacle. Wait a second. This is the guy that went into the cloud in chapter 24. This is the guy who, he went back up after the whole golden calf thing and interceded on behalf of Israel 5 times and offered up his life and got to see God's glory from behind when God covered his face. And remember what happened to his face? Started shining because of the reflected glory. It's kind of like, remember glow-in-the-dark t-shirts? Does anybody remember those? You expose it to the light, then you turn off the light. It's like, oh! It was that. It was that kind of shining. And now he can't. There was a mini tent of meeting where he met with God as a person talks to another person face to face, multiple times. What's going on? This is the big twist to the end of Exodus, is Moses can't go in. Something's changed. Because the problem that the Moses team is writing about and trying to get us to see, the problem is now no longer the presence of Yahweh. The presence is there. The problem is access, human access to that presence. So the book of Exodus ends with Yahweh's inside the tent, not obviously Yahweh's everywhere, but his visible presence is inside the tent, and Moses is outside the tent going, well, I can't come in. And that's what the book of Leviticus is for, which we're not studying this time, but the book of Leviticus is the walkthrough, step by step, with how the representative of Israel, in this case a high priest, is able to enter into God's presence. And it's not a free and easy experience. One imagines that at the beginning of Exodus, when Yahweh said he was calling Israel to be a kingdom of priests. Remember that? I think that was Exodus chapter 20. This is what he wanted of all of Israel, everyone to be a priest. The golden calf incident changed that. Israel is no longer, at this point in the story, a kingdom of priests. It's a kingdom with priests. And the priest, what is a priest? A priest is somebody who distributes blessing and mediates and intercedes on behalf of those who are being blessed. That's what a priest does. And now Israel is themselves in need of an intercessor, which Moses did on the mountain. But now, even you, Moses, you can't go in. This is the role that's been assigned to this one representative, this high priest that can go in once a year. And why is that? Isn't that strange? This is a foreshadowing that someday we are going to need someone. I think it's Deuteronomy 18, maybe verse 15, says that Moses says, someday the Lord will raise up somebody like me who will lead you. This is the future snake crusher of Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. Someone is being projected into the future that can fulfill this role and bring people into the presence of Yahweh. That's what's happening in real time in Moses' own day. So let's talk about that. I'm going to quote from Psalm 24. It's not on your screen, so you can just close your eyes and listen to this. Psalm chapter 24, starting at verse 3. Who shall ascend the mountain of the Lord? And who shall stand in his holy place? Well, he who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not lift up his soul to what is false, who does not swear deceitfully. He will receive blessing from the Lord and righteousness, tzedekah, from the God of his Yeshua, his salvation. Such is the generation of those who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. So who is worthy to ascend the mountain of the Lord? And the psalmist writes all these things that you're like, I don't know. That's a tall order, even the high priest. Man, it's just the grace of God that he can even sort of enter into God's presence. So verse 36, with this situation in hand, where we don't have anybody that's gone in yet, but the Moses team ends Exodus with this little future cast to what's going to happen in the rest of the Torah. Throughout their journeys, mostly that's the book of Numbers, throughout their journeys, whenever the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the sons of Israel would set out. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not set out until the day when it was taken up. For throughout their journeys, the cloud of Yahweh was on the tabernacle by day, and there was fire in it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel. So when the cloud moves, Israel moves. But when the cloud stays, Israel stays. And sometimes the cloud would stay there for quite some time. So it's not like they had to pack up every night. That's not the case at all. So Yahweh is present, but also he's leading them. He's the one that's guiding them on where to go. This is very weird to the ancient peoples and the ancient Near East. The goal and the ideal in the ancient Near East is not, a mobile place where the presence of the deity resides. The goal is always a fixed place. So this is very strange for ancient readers who are not Israelites, or even maybe some Israelites, to read and think, wow, this is what God set up initially? Is a mobile little mini universe that he's leading everybody in? Okay, so Exodus begins, as we talked about a few minutes ago, with Yahweh's chosen people who are trapped under Pharaoh, this snake king. And it ends with Yahweh moving in. He moves into their midst. The goal of Exodus is the restoration of God's presence. But we have a problem, and the problem is nobody can get in right now. That problem is in part resolved in the book of Leviticus. But we're going to talk about ultimate resolution in a minute. First, one of the scholars that has been so helpful in this, and there are some scholars that have been helpful in this study that I have not quoted from, and I feel bad, but Terence Fretheim is certainly one that has been extremely insightful. He writes, Israel's God, is writing about chapter 40, Israel's God now dwells with intensity and at close range in Israel's very midst. God actually takes up space in Israel's world. At the same time, the God who fills the tabernacle also fills the cosmos. On the one hand, this makes it clear that Israel's place of worship is not the only place in the world where God's presence can be found. God cannot be so confined. God is both near and far. Yet there is no other specific place in creation that is said to be filled up with God. The focused choice of place by God provides for an intensity of presence that is not true of the creation generally. The tabernacle may thus be said to be a kind of material body for God. It's no wonder that the New Testament can pick up this language of fullness and use it for God's bodily dwelling in Jesus. Which we're going to, not him, this is me, which we're going to talk about in week 1 of our Gospel of John story. Moreover, Israel's God is not present just in isolated moments of Israel's life or only to key leaders, but is present to the community as a whole on an ongoing basis. God continues to lead the people in all of their journeyings. The dwelling of God is not a static, immobile, unchanging presence. There's movement with this God, a movement that signals the comings and goings of Israel. The people are now no longer subjected to a changeless system, to an increasingly dispiriting bondage. They are followers of a God who is on the move, in whose service true freedom and joy are to be found. I don't know if that lit you up like it lit me up when I read that. That lights me up. So let's sum this up in a way that helps us to understand a little scene that the Gospel of Mark tells us about. In Exodus, at that mountain in Exodus chapter 24, when Moses ascends and he enters that cloud, and Yahweh, while he's there, Yahweh gives him the terms of the covenant. This is the marriage vows here, the 10 words, the 10 commandments. But after Israel's fail, which occurs while the vows are being written, and Moses' intercession on behalf of Israel, he actually offered his life. So, just a reminder, at the beginning of Exodus, and Moses encounters Yahweh at the burning bush, he gives 5 objections. Remember that? 5 reasons why. And then the 5th one is like, I send somebody else. I refuse. And here, after the golden calf incident, there's 5 intercessions. They match the 5 objections, kind of. And the big one being, I just blot my own name out of your book to save these people. This is huge. So after that, Moses sees the glory of Yahweh. Remember that? Yahweh passes in front of him. He sees his glory from behind, and his face is like glow-in-the-dark t-shirt. And Moses, with the people, build this tent so that the presence of Yahweh will be with them. But they can't get in the tent yet. So let's read this little passage from Mark chapter 9, shall we? Let's see if we see any of these elements. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him and led them up a high mountain where they were all alone. And there he was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white. Quick aside, Matthew adds the note in Matthew 17 that his face shone like the sun. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. So first of all, let's note, Jesus is not reflecting God's glory like a glow-in-the-dark t-shirt. The glory is actually coming from him. He's the one that's emanating it. And Elijah, who is like the standout among the prophets, and so he's a real person, but he's also representative of the prophets and the prophetic tradition and all the prophets that we have, the scrolls of the prophets. He's there next to Jesus, and so is the Torah, Moses. Moses, the captain of the Torah writing team. The law and the prophets are right there with him, talking with him. With him. Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it's good for us to be here. Hey, let's put up 3 tents. One for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He didn't know what to say. They were so scared. So Peter wants to build 3 tents as if he's just as important as the law and the prophets. Why doesn't Jesus or anybody else respond to Peter? Peter misunderstands. Jesus does not need a tabernacle because he is the tabernacle. He is accessible. And we are in him, and he is in us. And by calling in the name of Jesus, we encounter this intimate reunion of God and human. It's not in theory to be accessed someday. Here it is. What the Exodus tabernacle promised, Jesus actually fulfilled. And Mark, when he's writing this, he's on to it. And he uses this transfiguration narrative, which really happened, but he's using this narrative to unveil this epic truth to anybody with eyes to see and ears to hear. Verse 7. Then a cloud appeared and covered them. And a voice came from the cloud. This is my son, whom I love. Listen to him. They don't enter the cloud. The cloud actually covers them. And what happened when Moses went into the cloud on Sinai? You got the terms of the covenant, the 10 words, right? So what happens when the cloud covers them? Here are the terms of the covenant. Hey, this is my son whom I love. Listen to him. That's the terms. Listen. Listen to him. What happened to Moses and Elijah? I mean, they're not, well, look, suddenly they looked around and they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus. Now, Jesus makes it very clear that he does not abolish the law and the prophets. It's not like Jesus pulled out his 9mm and killed Moses and Elijah, right? This is not what happened. But everything Moses, everything Elijah, everything law, everything prophets is filled full in Jesus. Jesus fulfills the law and the prophets. So the question, who shall ascend to the mountain of the Lord? Jesus. And he is in you. And you are in him. So go up. Go up. You don't have to be afraid. You're not alone. All right, so let's take some reflections from our amazing students at the table. And for all the people that have served at this table, can we just give it up? Just thank you guys so much. Have we any reflections or any questions from our class?
One question is, why was the ark placed on the east side of the tabernacle, since going to the east was associated with bad or evil?
Was the east, that's a great question, by the way. Thank you for whoever asked that, for dialing into the imagery of the east being associated with Ra, or something bad. It's a little more nuanced than that, though. The east is associated with exile, the place of exile. It's also the place where the sun rises, so it's a place of the new day. But that's the place where exile happens. So if the presence of God is on the east, what does that suggest? Could it be that meeting him can happen, and maybe often does and usually happens, in exile? It's a great question. Let's dig deeper someday. Dave.
So I just want to elaborate on the transfiguration with Mark. So building on the fact that you have creation, and then you have Eden, the first temple or tabernacle, and then you have the tabernacle, and then you have Jesus, the ultimate tabernacle. So you have the whole cycle going through the Bible. I mean, Jesus is the ultimate high priest, and when the veil tore, that you don't need the temple anymore. So that's the full cycle.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, because you reminded me of something else. Genesis chapter 2, at the finish of when creation was done, everything's put in order. It says that Yahweh finished, right? Or Elohim finished. And Moses, when the tabernacle, he finished. Was there another "it's finished" statement somewhere in the Bible? Yeah. Yeah. On the cross, which is the enthronement of Jesus, there's new creation. New creation. Vindicated by the resurrection. Yeah. It is finished. Thank you.
In chapter 40, in verse 5, and it goes on a few other, I've highlighted it, it says the Ark of the Testimony. And I thought that was interesting. I don't know if it's in the version that was printed out, but it refers to the Ark of the Testimony. Makes me think of, we all have a testimony of how Christ came in our life. And it was like calling the Ark the Testimony. I was wondering if you were looking at that in Old Testament days, someone who's reading that, what would Ark of Testimony mean for them? Because I can think of what it means for me, like I have a testimony of Jesus Christ, how he's changed my life. But for them, when they refer to Ark of Testimony,
Thank
what
you.
would that mean?
Yeah, I need to do homework on that
Oh.
before I just speak off the top of my head. That requires homework. But awesome question. That's awesome.
You opened my eyes, Pastor Tim, to this part of Scripture because it made me think of different things. And the first one is in the beginning when it was talking about all the different pieces that made the plan. It made me think of Genesis where everything was chaotic, and then God put things into their own functions. And like you said, with the lampstands, it made me think of the sun and the stars and their specific functions.
That's right.
The other thing that stood out to me is obviously because of the sin, even though God came amongst the people, and you had mentioned Moses could no longer go there in the cloud because it's no longer a kingdom of priest anymore, but a kingdom with priest, because
Right.
there was that darkness, but there was only one, and we know that one is Jesus to lead the way. But it made me think of how great our God is, because like he was there among them trying to open up the window, almost like it is now after Jesus' death and resurrection, where the veil was torn and we have that direct relationship with him. It was like even back then, before any of that happened, he still kind of had that relationship with the people to allow them to have intimacy with him.
He wants
And
to
it was
give.
just beautiful.
Yeah, he wants to give. It's cool patterning, isn't it? Because, yes, the high priest, Aaron, and his successors are images of Jesus, our high priest. The lid of the ark, the elasterion in the New Testament, the kippur, is an image of Jesus. The burnt offering, the going up offering, is an image of Jesus going up. The presence of God is an image of the presence of Jesus. The tablets of the law, the word, is an image. Everything about this tabernacle. The tree of life, the lampstand, is, who's the tree of life? So the images are off the charts. Oh, the bread. Come on. The bread on the table. Come on. The New Testament authors did not just see an occasional pointing to Jesus. They saw Jesus all over the place. And I think we are free to do so as well. Thank you. Thank you. Be blessed, everyone. Be blessed.